My name is Caleb, and I'm 33 years old. I'm not someone who usually posts online about personal drama, especially not family drama, but I guess there's a first time for everything. You ever have a moment in life where someone pushes you so far past the line of reason, you just stop and think, okay, so this is really happening. That moment happened to me the day after my wedding. To backtrack just a bit, I come from a relatively small family. My dad passed away when I was in high school, and my mom followed a few years later. I was close to my grandfather on my dad's side. He was one of those gruff, no-nonsense types, the kind of guy who fixed his own roof at 75 and thought store-bought bread was a scam. We spent a lot of summers together at his Oceanfront property, a modest little one-story place back then that he'd bought in the 70s before the neighborhood became what it is today. Over the years, he kept improving it. By the time he passed, the house was worth somewhere in the ballpark of $4 million. No mortgage, no debts, just the house, the view, and a small trust to keep the property taxes covered for a few decades. When he passed, he left the house to me. He didn't leave anything to my uncle or cousins, just me. He said, in his words, "You're the only one who actually gave a damn about me when I was alive." I didn't contest it, and no one else really made noise about it. Maybe they assumed I'd sell it. I didn't. I kept the house, renovated it tastefully with the money he left, and used it as my quiet place, away from everything. I never flaunted it. I barely even mentioned it. It felt like mine and his in a way. Sacred. Fast forward to last year, I met someone. Her name is Amanda. We hit it off fast. One of those whirlwind kind of relationships where 6 months in you already feel like you know everything about each other. She was funny, sharp, a little high maintenance, but in a way I found oddly charming at the time. Her family, on the other hand, that was a different story. I'll admit, I had some red flags waving in the back of my mind early on. Amanda's mother, Patricia, had this way of speaking like everything she said was a royal decree. When she first met me, she smiled, tilted her head, and said, "So you're the man with no parents. That must be hard." Just like that. No follow-up, no compassion. It wasn't even phrased like sympathy, more like an observation of status. Still, I brushed it off. First impressions aren't everything, I told myself. But Patricia didn't ease up. She commented on everything, from the car I drove, practical, but not very commanding, to the neighborhood I lived in. And yes, I didn't live at the beach house. I rented a place closer to the city for work. The oceanfront place was a bit of a sanctuary, and something I didn't want to expose to her judgmental gaze. I never told Amanda about it either. Not because I was hiding it, but because it didn't feel relevant. We both made decent money, and I figured one day, when the time was right, I'd take her there. But as things got serious and we started talking marriage, I felt a gnawing sense that her family's opinions were leaking into her perception of me. The constant little jabs. You should dress more executive. Or, maybe Caleb should think about investing in property soon. Amanda laughed them off, but she never defended me either. That silence was loud. Still, love makes you compromise, right? Or maybe it makes you blind. Either way, I proposed, she said yes, and we got married in a small but elegant ceremony. Nothing too flashy, just our close friends, a few relatives, and, of course, her entire extended family who RSVP'd as if it were a royal gala. Patricia tried to change the venue twice, claimed the flowers weren't elevated enough, and even asked me a week before the wedding if I'd considered renting a tux that fit better across the shoulders. I kept the peace. I even paid for most of the wedding. Not because they couldn't afford it. They definitely could, but because I didn't want to feel indebted to Patricia. I didn't want to give her the leverage. Maybe, in some twisted way, I thought if I did enough to prove myself, she'd back off. She didn't. And now we come to the morning after the wedding. We were barely settled into our temporary apartment. The honeymoon was planned for the following week, when I heard a knock at the door. Amanda was still asleep. I answered in sweatpants and a t-shirt, bleary-eyed. Standing in the hallway, like they owned the building, were Patricia, her sister, Aunt Diane, and a man in a navy suit holding a leather briefcase. The moment I opened the door, Patricia walked past me like she lived there. "Good morning, Caleb," she said, as if we were old friends, and this wasn't wildly inappropriate. We thought it was time we had a little chat. You know, about the family assets. I was too stunned to speak. I shut the door behind them out of instinct. The man with the briefcase introduced himself as their family lawyer, a specialist in estate consolidation, whatever that meant. Patricia sat down on the couch, crossed her legs, and looked around the modest living room like she was slumming it. So, Amanda mentioned something about a property, something waterfront. My stomach dropped. I never told Amanda about the house in detail. I know that for sure. She knew my grandfather passed and that I'd inherited some property, but she never asked for details and I never offered. Maybe I should have. Maybe it wouldn't have mattered. I said cautiously yes. What about it? Patricia smiled like she was about to announce a promotion. Well, now that you and Amanda are married, we thought it would be appropriate to fold that asset into the family holdings. Amanda has always dreamed of opening a boutique bed and breakfast. You have a perfect location. We've drawn up some paperwork to get the title adjusted accordingly. The lawyer began to unzip his briefcase. I just stood there. I wasn't angry, not yet. I was confused. Disoriented, really. The kind of confusion where your brain stumbles over the words you're hearing because they don't make sense in any universe you know. I finally found my voice. The house is in a trust. My name. Only my name. And it's not for sale. Patricia didn't miss a beat. Of course, legally. But Caleb, we're family now. This house, this opportunity, it benefits us all. You don't want to deny your wife's family a chance to build something special, do you? I looked at the man with the briefcase. He was already pulling out a manila folder, sliding over a packet of papers that, from the brief glance I got, had phrases like transfer of deed and reassignment of title. I didn't touch them. Amanda walked out of the bedroom in a robe, eyes half closed. "What's going on?" she asked groggily. Her voice didn't carry concern, just curiosity. Patricia turned to her and said, "Darling, we're sorting out the house plans. We'll need contractors by next month if we want a spring opening." That's when I realized something deep in my gut. This wasn't new to Amanda. She knew. She had to know. But she didn't look guilty. She didn't even look nervous. Just tired. "Mom," she said, stretching. "Can we talk about this later?" Patricia frowned. "Later?" "Amanda, this is time sensitive. You and Caleb need to be aligned. You can't build a life on secrets." I wasn't even looking at Patricia anymore. I was staring at my wife. My new wife. Wondering who, exactly, I had just promised forever to. That's when Amanda sighed and said, "Look, Caleb, we're married now. It's just a house. If it helps everyone, what's the big deal?" That sentence, that exact phrase, that's where something inside me finally clicked into place. And in that moment, everything changed. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just stared at her, trying to process the wave of emotions crashing all at once. Confusion, betrayal, disbelief. The room felt smaller, like the walls were pressing in. Amanda turned around and walked back into the bedroom like we were in the middle of a casual disagreement over groceries, not discussing the future of something that meant the world to me. Patricia clapped her hands softly, like she was finalizing a business merger. "Wonderful. Let's just go ahead and sign the preliminary transfer forms so we can expedite the permits." She turned to the lawyer. "He'll sign today." That was the moment I realized Patricia didn't see me as a person. I wasn't her son-in-law. I was an obstacle to be managed. A bridge to something she felt entitled to cross. I finally sat down, slowly, across from her. Calm. Still. I glanced down at the papers. Then I looked her in the eyes. "I'm not signing anything." Her smile faltered. "Excuse me. The house is not community property. It was placed in an irrevocable trust well before I met Amanda. It's protected from claims in the event of marriage, divorce, and yes, even family pressure." "You're not getting it." The lawyer adjusted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. He said something about reviewing the trust if needed, but I barely heard him. Patricia's face hardened, and I saw something shift in her expression, something cruel beneath the surface. "So that's your stance? You'd let your new family suffer just to cling to some house your dead grandfather left you?" I stood up. "I don't remember asking your opinion. And this conversation is over." She rose slowly, her tone icy. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. You think you're the only man Amanda could have married? She chose you out of loyalty, out of love. But love fades when you start putting property over people." I didn't flinch. "I think you should leave." She didn't move right away. Neither did the lawyer. It took a few more seconds, tense, heavy seconds, before she gathered her things. As she walked past, she muttered, "You'll regret this." When the door closed behind them, I stood there in silence. Amanda came back out minutes later, fully dressed. She didn't say anything. just sat at the dining table, scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Did you know she was planning that? I asked. She didn't look up. She mentioned the idea a while back. That's not what I asked. She finally glanced at me. Okay, yes. She wanted to see if we could make it a family business. I thought if she talked to you herself, you'd be more open to it. And you didn't think to talk to me about it first? Before inviting a lawyer into my apartment the day after our wedding. I didn't invite them. She just does things. I nodded. Her tone wasn't defensive, just tired. But what struck me wasn't what she said, it was what she didn't say. She didn't apologize. She didn't say she disagreed with her mom. She didn't say she was on my side. I sat back down, staring at her. You do realize that house isn't going anywhere, I said slowly. It's not getting transferred. It's not going to be turned into a business. It's staying exactly as it is. Amanda exhaled, as if I was being unreasonable. Caleb, this doesn't have to be a whole thing. If you're really that attached to it, maybe we can compromise. Let her manage it for a while. Just temporarily. I almost laughed. Temporarily. That word hit me harder than it should have. As if you can temporarily hand over a piece of your family legacy to someone who sees you as a footnote in their daughter's resume. At that moment, I knew we had a bigger problem than her mother. The rest of that day passed like a haze. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't storm out. I didn't even argue. I just watched her, the woman I had married 24 hours ago, act like my boundaries were inconveniences. And I kept thinking back to my grandfather, how he warned me before he passed. Be careful, Caleb. People smile with their teeth when there's a house near water. I didn't sleep that night. Amanda did. By morning, I had a plan. Not out of spite. Out of self-preservation. I wasn't going to let this spiral. I wasn't going to be another story where the entitled in-laws carved out pieces of someone's life while smiling sweetly through dinner. I wasn't going to wake up one day to find the locks changed on my own property. So while Amanda was in the shower, I made a few quiet calls. To the trust attorney. To the security company that managed the beach house. And to someone else, someone I hadn't spoken to in a while, but who owed me a favor. The kind of favor you only call in when things have crossed a line. Then I went for a drive. Out to the coast. Out to the house. When I arrived, the view looked the same as always. But it felt different, like I was seeing it through new eyes. I walked the perimeter, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. It smelled like salt and old wood and peace. I stood in the living room for a long time, not moving. And that's when I made my decision. They weren't just not getting the house. They were never going to step foot inside it again. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to dismantle their plan piece by piece, with every ounce of calm, calculated silence I had left. And by the time they realized what I had done, it would be far, far too late. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I stayed at the beach house. I turned off my phone. I needed time. I needed to be in a place where my thoughts were my own. No buzzing, no guilt tripping, no fake apologies or explanations wrapped in honeyed tones. Just the ocean, the quiet, and me. I stood out on the deck with a blanket wrapped around my shoulders, watching the waves slam into the shore like they had something to say. My grandfather always said the sea had a memory, that it remembered who belonged. That night, I think it remembered me. The next morning, I drove into town and met with Michael Tran, the attorney who'd helped draft my grandfather's trust years ago. Sharp guy. He wore plain clothes and had a voice that didn't waste time. I explained what happened, about the uninvited visit, the lawyer, the family business, and Amanda's reaction. He listened without interruption, only raising an eyebrow once when I mentioned the paperwork they'd tried to slip in. After I finished, he leaned back in his chair. You're safe legally. The house is protected under the trust, and since it was placed prior to the marriage, it's not considered marital property. Not unless you intentionally commingle it. I haven't, I said firmly. Good. But you're in a vulnerable position socially. If your wife and her family push hard enough, they could make your life miserable, even if they can't touch the house. You need to think long term. I nodded slowly. That's why I'm here. And so we started planning. The first step? Ironclad boundaries. I had Michael amend the trust with an addendum, something my grandfather had included as a suggestion but never filed. It stated that only direct blood descendants of the trust creator had access to the property, and that any third-party use of the home, whether personal or commercial, would trigger a clause locking down access for a minimum of 15 years. Extreme? Maybe, but necessary. Patricia and Amanda had already shown they weren't going to respect polite refusal. The second step? Security. I called up Leo, a longtime friend from college who now ran a boutique private security firm. He specialized in wealthy clients with privacy concerns. A few favors and a hefty invoice later, the beach house was scheduled for a full overhaul, discreet surveillance, electronic gate, biometric locks. The works. Leo didn't ask many questions. Just said, "You expecting trouble?" "Not yet," I replied. "But I like to be early." He nodded. "We'll make sure nobody steps foot on that sand without your say-so." The third step? Paperwork. So much paperwork. I filed for a temporary separation. Not a divorce. Not yet. I didn't want Amanda or Patricia to catch wind of what I was doing. Not until I was ready. But the separation gave me room to move, to breathe, and to legally redirect my assets back into a separate account that only I controlled. No shared credit lines. No joint investments. Every dollar that had my name on it got quietly walked back into my corner. Then I packed up my things from the apartment when Amanda wasn't home. I didn't leave a note. I didn't return her texts. Not yet. Because silence, I was learning, is its own kind of power. 2 days passed before I finally got a knock on the door of the beach house. I didn't answer. I watched from the window as Amanda stood at the gate, squinting at the camera. She had a shopping bag in one hand and a frustrated look on her face. The gate didn't open. She knocked again, then rang the new intercom. "Caleb," she said, her voice echoing through the system. "This is ridiculous. Just let me in. We need to talk." I leaned against the wall and stayed quiet. A few seconds passed. She crossed her arms. "I know you're in there. You can't just ghost me like this. What are you even trying to prove?" Her voice wasn't angry. Not yet. Just annoyed. Like I was the unreasonable one. Then she tried again. "Look, I didn't mean to blindside you. I thought if Mom talked to you, you'd be more open-minded. She's just trying to help." I clenched my jaw. The word help tasted like vinegar. Amanda stood there for a few more minutes, then pulled out her phone. She paced a little. Tried calling. I watched it buzz on my coffee table and didn't move. She finally gave up and walked away, muttering something I couldn't hear. I didn't sleep that night either, but not from anxiety. This time, it was clarity. The kind of clarity that comes from seeing people for who they really are when they think they already own you. The next day, Patricia called. Blocked. Then Diane. Blocked. Then Amanda again, several times. She left one voicemail where her tone finally cracked. She wasn't calm anymore. "Caleb, this isn't a good look for you. You're acting paranoid. It's just a house. Why are you blowing up our whole marriage over a stupid house?" She didn't get it. It was never about the house. It was about control. It was about trust. It was about the fact that the moment things didn't align with their vision, they tried to muscle me into submission, with papers, with lawyers, with guilt. But I wasn't going to break. A few days later, I finally agreed to meet Amanda for coffee in a public place. Neutral ground. No lawyers. No family. Just us. When I walked into the cafe, she was already seated, sipping something with oat milk and tapping her phone. She looked up and gave me a smile that I might have once found comforting. Now it felt rehearsed. "I was starting to think you'd never show," she said. "I almost didn't," I replied, sliding into the seat across from her. She wasted no time. "Look, I know things got out of hand, but we're married. We need to figure this out like adults. That house, it's not worth blowing everything up over." There it was again. That house. I took a deep breath. "Amanda, do you even realize what you did? You sent your mother and a lawyer to my door the day after our wedding to take something that's been in my family for generations. Without asking. Without even talking to me first. She was just trying to help me get started with something real. And I was supposed to what? Sign it over like a birthday gift?" She said nothing. Her jaw tightened slightly. I continued. "I've taken steps. The house is locked down permanently. The trust has new terms. Legally speaking, no one but me can use it for any reason, personal or commercial. You won't ever see the inside of that house again." Her eyes narrowed. "So that's it. You're punishing me because my mom had a bad idea?" I laughed once. "Amanda, it wasn't just her idea. You let it happen. And the worst part? You didn't even think you did anything wrong." She looked at me with a mix of frustration and disbelief, as if she couldn't understand how I'd gotten this far without seeing her side. Then her voice dropped. Low. Bitter. "You know what? I could have done better. That hurt more than it should have." But I nodded. "You still can." Then I stood up. Her voice followed me as I walked out. You think you're untouchable because of that trust? You think this ends here? I didn't turn around, because it didn't end there. It hadn't even begun. 3 weeks passed. In that time, Amanda tried every angle she could think of. First came the love-bombing texts, old photos of us, inside jokes, long messages about how we could rebuild, as if all of this had been a minor misunderstanding and not a coordinated grab at my family's legacy. When those didn't work, she pivoted to guilt. She sent voice notes in the middle of the night about how I was abandoning her, about how marriage means sacrifice, and how she felt blindsided that I wouldn't even try to fix things. I didn't reply. She wasn't sorry for what happened. She was sorry I didn't roll over. Then came the escalation. One morning, I received a formal notice requesting mediation. Amanda had filed for access to marital assets, arguing that the beach house, despite being protected, was part of our shared lifestyle and should at least be partially monetized during our separation. I smiled when I opened the envelope. She had no idea what she had walked into. Because while Amanda and Patricia had been scheming for weeks, I had gone silent on purpose. And in that silence, I'd been documenting everything. I compiled every text, every voicemail, every time she admitted to knowing her mother had a plan. The security system at the beach house? It had logged her unsuccessful attempts to access the property 3 different times, twice using her sister's car, once on foot. She'd even tried to get in with a fake contractor ID. All of it, I forwarded to my lawyer. And then, quietly, I filed. Not just for divorce, but for damages. See, the trust included a clause, one my grandfather added after a previous ugly family fight decades ago, that stated any attempt to seize, profit from, or misrepresent ownership of the estate would trigger a financial penalty. The trust would move the equivalent of 10% of its assets into a private legal defense fund, and the offender would be liable for those costs, regardless of outcome. Amanda's request to monetize the house. It triggered that clause. The letter she got 2 days later was short, formal, and devastating. It stated that not only would she be receiving nothing from the trust, but that she now owed $183,000 in penalties, legal fees, and damages for breach of marital contract and attempted property misappropriation. She called me. I didn't answer. Patricia emailed me through her assistant, demanding that I reconsider and act like a man. I forwarded it directly to my lawyer. They tried a new tactic after that, public shame. Amanda posted cryptic messages online, quotes about betrayal, secrets in marriage, and even hinted that I had hidden assets from her for years. But she underestimated one thing. Her own friends didn't buy it. One of them even messaged me privately. She really thought she could just take your house? She told us you were stupid for not putting it in both names. That message? Screenshot. Archived. Meanwhile, I focused on the life I actually wanted. I moved into the beach house full-time. I canceled all the wedding photos, returned every gift, and sent refunds to every guest who had contributed to the registry. I wrote a short note explaining why. I kept it civil, honest, and dignified. No drama, just the truth. Amanda was furious. She texted me, "You're ruining my reputation." I didn't reply, because I wasn't ruining anything. I was revealing it. Eventually, she backed down. The legal pressure, the mounting costs, and the weight of a narrative she couldn't control finally wore her down. She withdrew her request. We signed the divorce papers. No spousal support. No settlement. No apology. Just silence. Patricia never contacted me again. 6 months later, I hosted a small gathering at the beach house. Just a few friends, some quiet music, a little fire pit out by the water. No drama. No lawyers. No shadows. I stood on the porch that evening, drink in hand, watching the tide roll in just like it always had. I thought of my grandfather. I thought of what he protected, and how I'd nearly let someone take it from me in the name of love. But love, real love, doesn't come with ultimatums or contracts or ambushes in your living room the morning after your wedding. It comes with honesty, with respect, with choosing someone because of who they are, not in spite of what they own. I still believe in that kind of love, but now I know the difference. And the next time I meet someone, I'll tell them about the house on day one, not to impress them, but to see if they care too much. Because the ones who don't, they're the ones who belong. And this time, I'll make sure the gate stays closed until I'm absolutely sure who's on the other side.